discuss is our sense of taste. Now, people used to think that different areas of the tongue were responsible for different tastes. For instance, they thought that the very tip of your tongue was responsible for sweet taste. The very back was responsible for bitter tastes. The sides were sour, and so on and so forth. We now know that that is not true. All the different taste buds for different tastes and all that stuff are distributed evenly on your tongue. They're all mixed around. They're not in one area. So if, God forbid, I got the end of my tongue chopped off, I could still enjoy a Hershey bar. So that's very, very important. Now, even though they're not divided up on the tongue in any weird way, we still know that there are 5 basic tastes. I bet you could name a bunch of them. What does a pretzel taste like? Of course, it's salty. What about M&Ms? Of course, you guys know that they're sweet. This next one is tough. I'd give this to an older person. The next taste, this is one of the most recently discovered ones and the most recently identified ones. This is called, actually, umami. Now, the reason it's called umami is because umami is the Japanese word for savory, and Japanese were the ones who discovered this taste. That's things that you couldn't really think of as sweet or salty or any one thing in particular. Think of things like bread and soups and chicken broth and things like that. Those are what we call savory or umami. What about this one? That's bitter. Things are very bitter. Things like coffee, things like grapefruit, things that kind of make you go, huh. Those are bitter things, and that's the 4th taste. And this one should be easy. Of course, that's sour. The 5th taste is sour. Things that make you crinkle up your nose like this. Things that are very, very sour. Things that are acidic. Citrus fruits are oftentimes quite sour. Different combinations of these tastes can create familiar sensations. For instance, think of like bacon. Bacon is a combination of savory and salty. So that is a particular signal that gets sent to the brain. So when you take a piece of bacon and you take a bite, you know that that's bacon, because that is sending that very unique signal to your brain. Now, why can't you taste when your nose is plugged? How many of you all have ever had a cold and not been able to enjoy the foods you'd like to enjoy? Well, there's a reason for that. And for that, I'll need another volunteer. As we'll discuss a little bit later, about 75% of your sense of taste relies on your sense of smell. The brain is getting signals from 2 different places. But if the brain can't get the signal from one of those places, it's like hearing every 4th word of a sentence. Imagine how hard it would be to understand someone if they only used every 4th word. Did you know that, Dad, that the 75% is based on smell?
Did not know that.
Quite a lot. That's why you can't taste anything when you have a cold. Or at least you can't taste things the same way. Now, I have this test for my dad. Dad, I need you to place this chip clip on your nose so you can't smell anything. All right.
I cannot smell anything.
Perfect. That's just the way I wanted it. Now, I have in these 2 little baggies potatoes and apples. Now, honestly, right this second, I can't tell the difference. But it's going to be easy for me to tell because I can smell. He can't. So what he's going to do is he's going to try to taste the difference here without looking, and he's going to see if he can tell which is which. I'm going to place them both in your hand, Dad. This is the first one here. Go ahead. Alright, now don't say anything yet. I'm going to have you taste the second one right after it as soon as you're done. You got it?
Yes.
Can you breathe?
No.
Okay, that's alright. You're fine. Just keep going. Show them what's going on. Alright. Now, first of all, how well can you taste those? Can you really taste them?
0 taste on either.
Okay. You can probably maybe tell a little bit by the texture, but if you didn't have any difference in texture, do you think you'd be able to guess?
No, there's no way they taste exactly the same, which is no taste
Perfect.
whatsoever.
I'm trying to make him talk as much as possible with that on his nose. It's
Yeah.
awesome. So, Dad, the very first one, what was the first one?
That was an apple.
Good guess. Very good. That was an apple.
And I could tell it was a little juicier. I could tell a little bit by the texture.
Because I cut it up this morning before I came here.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I mean, that's the thing. You can't taste these things. They're very, very indiscernible when your nose is plugged.
Can I take the, oh, no.
I suppose. So why can't you taste when your nose is plugged? Well, here's the deal. You actually can. Just not as well and not in the same way. Again, your brain detects both smell and taste. Actually, about 75% of your sense of taste is reliant on your sense of smell. So when you have your nose plugged, you're missing out on 3/4 of that information. Imagine how hard it would be for you to understand me if you could only hear every 4th word I say. That would be very difficult. Hearing is another one of the most important senses you have, and that one is still important today. If you're driving down the road and you can't hear things, it's going to be really, really hard to hear if somebody honks at you because they're close, or if an ambulance is coming up behind you. It is very important that we are able to hear. These 3 little bones here are called the malleus, the incus, and the stapes, otherwise known as the hammer, the anvil, and the stirrup. That's really important for us because those bones and every tiny little intricate part of your ear here is responsible for those vibrations that send those electrical signals to your brain. Now, the entire hearing mechanism is dependent on vibrations. Everything that makes a sound vibrates the air molecules around it. If I clap my hands, what actually happens there in a split second is that my clapped hands vibrate this air molecule, that vibrates this air molecule, that vibrates this one, that vibrates this one, that vibrates this one, that vibrates this one, until it gets to your eardrum, and then that air molecule vibrates your eardrum. Now that tiny vibration in your eardrum will send that electrical signal to your brain that says, someone just clapped their hands. This is another very, very valuable sense to have if we are in caveman times, because if I hear this roar when I'm on my little hunting party, oh hey, leopard, I better get ready to fight or I gotta get out of here. That's why sense of hearing and the quickness with which it happens is so very, very important. Now, as you saw when I held my little ear up to the camera, the ear is an incredibly intricate piece of machinery. All these tiny, tiny, tiny little pieces and these tiny little bones and these tiny little mini organs are all working together in tandem to be able to make you hear. It's only logical that those are the parts, those tiny little very delicate parts, are the parts that are fairly easily broken down, especially as we get older and we have a little bit more trauma to our ears. Those parts are slowly, slowly, slowly going to be broken down. Now for this next test, I'm going to need another volunteer. All right, we are back with my dad. Dad, say hello again.
Hi, everybody.
Now, Dad, will you please quickly tell the camera how old you are?
27.
Liar.
52.
Good. Now, because he is 52 years old, the various mechanisms in his ear are kind of starting to break down. The ear is such a delicate thing with so many tiny, intricate pieces that it's only logical to think that it's going to start breaking down after a while. The cochlea and all the different parts of the ear are getting a little overused, we'll say. So, as he gets a little older, it's going to be a little harder for him to hear things. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to play various pitches of sound for my dad. Now, these are actually scientifically studied pitches, and what they do is that they can tell basically how old you are. Certain pitches will be, you'll be able to hear them if you are below 60 years old. Certain pitches you'll be able to hear if you are below 50, so on and so forth. And we're going to see how many of these my dad can hear. So, Dad, again, you are 52. So, this one you should be able to hear if you are a human. So let's go ahead and do that test real quick. Dad, here it comes. Can you hear that?
Yes, I can.
All right. Now here comes the next one. If my dad is below 60, which he is, he really should be able to hear this one. So, let's see.
Yes.
All right, not bad. That's 10 kilohertz. If you are below 60, you should be able to hear that sound. So, Dad, here comes the one you should be able to hear if you are below 50. Now, he might be able to hear this because he's not very far beyond 50. And if he's a lucky guy and he has good hearing, he might be able to hear this one. So, Dad, here comes below 50. This is 12 kilohertz.
Easily.
You hear
Got
that?
it.
All right, good, fantastic. Now, this next one is 14 kilohertz. This one he should be able to hear if he's below 45. He will have to be pretty darn lucky to be able to hear this one, but you never know. So, Dad, here it comes. You hear that?
One more time.
Okay.
Yes.
You can hear that one?
Sounds kind of like when you walk into a room and there's a TV on, you can hear that high
Okay.
pitch.
Okay.
I
So
heard
there's a
that.
hint of something. He cannot hear it. Could you hear it as well as the
No.
last ones? Okay.
No.
That's all right. See, I can because I'm 25 years old. I can hear that one pretty easily. Now it's kind of starting to feel like it's almost like in my brain, that kind of sound, but I can still hear that one. Now, Dad, here comes the next one. This is 15 kilohertz. You should be able to hear this if you're below 40. My guess is that he will not be able to hear this one. So, here it comes. Can you hear that one?
Oh, I don't know.
Want me to do it one more time?
Yes.
Here it comes.
No,
Okay.
not really.
Did you hear like a click
Yeah,
at the beginning?
yes, I did.
That's just my computer
Right.
at the beginning of the sound. It makes like a click sound. So what he probably heard there was click.
Man, I
Click.
couldn't quite hear it.
Couldn't really hear anything at all, not the pitch. Now, here's another thing that's kind of interesting. I can hear that pitch. I am below 40 years old, so really that's not saying much. I should be able to hear that one. This one you can hear if you're below 24 years old. Now, I should be having a little bit of trouble with this one, so I'm just going to give you my word for it on here. I can't hear that one at all.
I can't
That's
hear that
terrible.
either.
And this one you should be able to hear if you're below 20, which should be really fun for some of our first graders and second graders in the crowd to see if they can hear better than their parents. This one you should be able to hear if you've got good young ears, and I definitely don't because I couldn't hear anything there. So that's the way pitch works in the ear, and it's kind of, the ear kind of breaks down over time, and that's logical. It's like a car, you know, the more you drive your car, the more broken down it gets. If you go to rock concerts all the time, or if you work in a factory, or if you drive a truck, sometimes your ears are going to break down a little bit more over time. I'm a teacher, so I'm very lucky. I don't have a lot of strain on my ears, so hopefully I'll be able to hear well throughout my life. Now, the reason my dad had trouble with those pitches is because he's getting older. His ears are very, very slowly starting to break down. Now, they're not breaking down as quickly as they could be because, like me, my dad's a teacher, and he has the good fortune of working in a place that is relatively quiet. Now, depending on how quiet a high school classroom is, that could be different, but it's at least not working in a factory or driving a truck or working on a shuttle launch pad, or working on a runway. That's very damaging to your ear, especially if you do it over and over and over in your daily life for a very long time. That's why you quite often see air traffic controllers wearing earplugs, or those guys with the sticks that do this wearing earplugs. That's really important for them because otherwise their sense of hearing will break down very quickly. Now that sound you heard, those various pitches, those really high ones that felt like they were going straight to your brain, there are people who hear that all the time. If you ever hear maybe your grandparents or maybe even your parents talking about a ringing in the ears, that's actually a thing called tinnitus. That's an issue with the ear where you hear that all the time. Imagine how frustrating that would be. So if you ever hear your family or someone talking about ringing in the ears, just know what that means and know how frustrating and aggravating that must be. Now, there are cases where your ears can ring after, say, a blow to the head. When I was in high school, I played softball. One day we were playing soft toss, and I was actually very close to the batter, and I wasn't paying attention. Shame on me. What happened was that batter hit a ball on target with my temple. Knocked me out cold. Now, the oddest thing happened. My vision completely went black. That was gone. But what the interesting thing was that I couldn't hear. I expected the vision to go out. You know, once I got hit in the head and I kind of processed what happened, I realized why I couldn't see. But the thing was that shocked me was that I suddenly heard this beep in my ears that I couldn't figure out. I couldn't hear any of my friends talking to me, and all I could hear was that high-pitched, like, squeal. Imagine, does anybody play video games in here? Imagine, like I've seen on video games these days, someone throws like a flashbang into a room, or like a grenade blows up near you. And actually the video game will simulate that beep, and you can't really hear. And that's what happens in real life. That's the fascinating thing, is that that case of acute tinnitus will happen right after a blow to the head or right after that trauma to your ear. Oftentimes people who shoot a gun will hear that in their ear. So it's really important to take care of your ears and make sure you don't get hit in the head with a softball.